Okay, so we are going to be talking about some very intense topics in this class, actually, and um, there's no way that I can go over the whole array of the way that these patterns are expressed, but I can go over a lot of them. Um, right now, we are experiencing a lot of intense energy. I don't know, like, please let me know in the chat if you're also experiencing it from different parts of the world, of course. So now we are in the full moon, and this is the final full moon of 2020. So we can really let go of a lot of negative energies. And so what we're going to, and the way that we do that is we take things that have been created out of quantum energy, because everything is made of quantum energy, and then we melt it back down. And then I will guide us through a meditation that's going to help us create something new out of it. So I'm going to talk about the material that you need or that you can use uh, to melt down and then create something that you want. Okay, so when I'm talking about all these patterns, maybe something triggers you, you can just write it down, because then you can use that in the next part of the class. And it's could be as a really good timely pattern that is going to be like a good source material. So by the way, for those of you who are new, my name is Arik. Nice to meet you. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in your part of the world. And I just want to make sure everything is working here. Okay, yeah, perfect. So we are in, without a doubt, in kind of like this tension, this pulling of sun moon energy. We're also in what's kind of known as the spiritual war that's going on in the world. And we also have our own inner wars as well. And this whole class, I'm going to be talking about codependency and addiction and the wars that we have with them. And we need to know right away that we cannot win these battles. We cannot win these things alone. So like we need help. And I'm going, by the time I finish this with this teaching, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. But first, what we need to do is we need to really break the chains of codependency. We need to break the chains of codependency. And maybe you know what codependency is, maybe you have an idea, maybe you've heard about it somewhere, but really in a very simplified way, and it has an endless and very complicated expressions, but very simply put, codependency is when you are like making deals with things, okay? When you're using things or you're using people, and it's like this unspoken contract, this unspoken agreement. And it's traditionally used for addicts, people who are addicted to drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever it is. And quite frankly, we all have our own addictions, so you can apply it to anything. But being codependent, it has a lot of downsides. And it's very interesting because when we are codependent, even in spite of all those downsides, we keep doing it. We keep doing it over and over and over again. We keep going back into it until we break those chains. And in this workshop, in part 2 of this video, we are going to be breaking through those chains and breaking out of those, as much as we can. So again, codependence is really that unspoken deal that is made. It's understood, it's expected. And again, like with many addicts, for example, most addicts, at the core of addiction is a narcissism, because it's about me, my needs first, me above the other person. And when we are codependent, we are entirely narcissistic. We are entirely selfish. Even if we try to present ourselves as caring and loving, and a lot of times we confuse love for codependency. We think that this is love or loyalty, and it's not, because really each person is putting themselves first in the most negative way that you can imagine. So as we are expecting that the other person or the other thing is going to fulfill our expectations, what happens is it always leads us into a state of resentment, even if the expectations are accidentally filled. So you can have, for example, 2 people in a relationship, and they both have these unspoken expectations or this unspoken agreement, it's entirely dishonest. And maybe just by the straw of luck or unluck, however you want to look at it, these expectations are fulfilled, and this can happen for many years. But then one day when the expectations aren't filled anymore, then the shit, as we say, is going to hit the fan. So it basically, this is really, I'm going to always try to re-simplify it because it can be very complicated. You can be codependent within a relationship, even if like you're not codependent on like an outer layer, you can be codependent on more inner, emotional, mental, spiritual layers. Okay, so I'm always going to try to re-simplify it. And if you get confused or anything, please, use the chat. I will try to look at it. I mean, I don't know if I can manage it all, but it's there. So basically it comes down to someone who uses. And I use that terminology very specifically because if you talk about someone who uses, you essentially mean someone who uses like a recreational drug or they're addicted to something. But it also refers to people who are users, right? People who are opportunists, people that are like fair-weathered friends or fair-weathered family members, a user. And so we think that it's more innocent than it is. It's actually a very serious deal. And it's also what's really tying us down with our attachments into the material world. It's a big part of why we are in this mess that we are in with the world now. In Cancer, the full moon in Cancer rules over family. Oh man, and I mean codependency is like the interwoven fabric between family members sometimes, most of the time actually. And really with, like, for example, with parents, if the child wants love or if the parent wants love, then it's not there, right? Okay, in cases like where it's or not received, because a parent can be, sending out, broadcasting the love, but maybe the child cannot receive it. So then that depletion is there and then they still want it. Okay, so again, it can get complicated, but I bring it back. So if you want love from your parent or from your child, for example, you'll do whatever is necessary to get it for yourself. Now, again, it's about using the other, whether it's your parent or your child, for your own selfish reasons. I want love, so I'm going to do what I need to do to get it, okay? And again, this also happens with friends. It can happen in business, but normally not, because the contract there is exposed, and I'll get into that in a second. But like I was talking about fair-weathered friends, a fair-weathered friend is a very clear indication of someone who's codependent. I'm there when it's easy, but when it's not easy, I'm not there, because I mean, why would I put in that extra effort? That's entirely codependence there. Well, what's in it for me? Unless, of course, then I'm being looked at as holy and I'm being looked at as this amazing friend and I'm being looked at, then this could be like the ego benefit, right? But then the weather then shifts in favor of the user. So, but, maybe also we use people for approval. This is codependency. We use people for permission to do things, like as in a justification, like not really being able to make decisions or choices or actions without the other person, or wanting to feel secure. So these are all reasons why we can use another person. But I was talking about resentment earlier, and it's kind of like, well, how does this always end up in resentment? I mean, like, if I'm getting what I want from the other person, how could I ever be resentful? Well, you get resentful because codependency is never honest. It's not an honest way to relate. It's forced. Codependency creates forced relationships. It creates fake relationships. Even if it looks really good on the outside, it's not really true on the inside. And you will know it because there's this burden. Oh my God. It comes with this burden. And if you're in a relationship that's codependent, it's a burden. And sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. Because there's just too much dishonesty with codependent relationships. And that's why it's a burden, because you have to constantly, be putting on the mask, AKA 2020. And then of course there's the dread, and then there's the entitlement, and it's the entitlement to, like, you better give me the energy, or you better give me the attention, or you better give me the whatever it is that I'm craving, otherwise I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back to this, like, kind of also this ultimatum energy. And you will also find that people who are codependent, they will go dark. They'll just turn off and go dark, because it's like, that's the fair weather again. That it's not, the weather conditions are not favorable to them, so they're not going to show up. And it's really just like this dishonest, toxic relationships that, we all contribute to it, but we also have it in our life as well. And these toxic relationships that that also want to cut you off from other people, that it's a really sticky bad place to be in, with a lot of symptoms. And also codependents, they have no boundaries. If you think of, Cancer as a water sign, if you ever tried to draw a boundary in the ocean, you can't. I mean, you can, but like, can you see it? Really? No, you can't. And so it's there's no boundaries, there's no borders, and they inject themselves into everything. Codependent people, they will just cross every boundary and inject themselves into relationships, and inject themselves into situations that they have no business being in. And also, it's kind of like the ego will force a relationship where there isn't one, and then they try to control you, because it's a lot about, really, it's about controlling the other person. These are all degraded Cancer themes in this part of the zodiac anyhow. So, I mean, it sounds really intense. It sounds quite horrible, but then it's like, what's the solution? How are we going to do that? Of course, with the meditation that we're going to do, but also with this question that's coming up for this full moon in Cancer is, who is the ruler of the world? Who is the ruler of my reality, and why? And this is a very powerful question. Write it down. Who is the ruler of the world? Question mark. Who is the ruler of my reality? Question mark. Why? So I can just tell you that anybody who has a following, or fans, or even students, or family members, friends, whatever, it's very interesting, because if you have a following, for example, and again, you can apply this even just to your own life. If you make your following your ruler of your reality, then of course it's ruling your world, right? So this is, of course, you're worried what people think about you. And then these masses, these people, then they decide and define who you are and how you're supposed to act. Now, this is a codependency of the person being followed, or the teacher, for example. And this is very unfortunate, because what happens then is that the people that the person is supposed to relate to, whether it's fans, family members, friends, whatever, you are then betraying all those people by being codependent with basically the naysayers and the haters. And this is very intense, because there's a group and there's a support for every person. And that's also the supporting energy of Cancer. It's the group, it's the tribe, it's the community. So if we, stay with me here. So like, if we change ourselves and bend and twist and become what the other person wants us to become, that's codependency, because you have the hidden expectation of their, I guess you would say, fellowship, or family bond, or friendship, or whatever you want to call it, in return for behaving how they want you to behave. And it's totally unspoken, it can be outspoken, and then you can decide yes or no. But then even if you decide, then you say, okay, well, I want to be codependent. And then this is what we call traditionally a sellout. This is sellout energy. Okay. So that is very intense. And I can just tell you from my own experience that students or people who want to learn from me, if they come to me expecting like a codependent relationship, they're not going to get it. And in many times, people who are on a spiritual path, for example, they can very easily become codependent with their teachers, with the prestige or the name that they have, or oh my God, Billy so and so, or Sarah so and so, like, you're such a good student, and that's all they want to hear. That's all they want to hear, and that's a codependency. And if the teacher doesn't say that, if the teacher isn't being codependent with what the student wants, then they go. Then they go. Or if they don't like something that's written in an article or in a book or something, and it's like, well, I don't like that, but it's exactly what you needed to hear. But because it's not falling within your codependent parameters, you're going to miss out on your upgrade. You're going to get stuck in judgment. You're going to go into that limitations and then, shackle on chains because you're not necessarily stepping up to the next level. So these are all these unspoken things. Now, what's a good way to expose this and to avoid this? Well, first of all, I have to tell you, you are the ruler of your reality, but when you give it to somebody else, then you're already falling into codependency. So, but if you know that you're the ruler of your reality, then what you can do is that then you can openly and honestly make these deals and these contracts with another person. And that's why I say in business, normally there isn't a lot of codependence, even though it can be there also, especially if you're a bad business person, you can be very codependent. It can be very bad because it's like then all this unspoken stuff that you get out of it, like, association by name or the right address or the right, status, whatever, or the, whatever it is, validity. But that's, that's more advanced. What I'm saying now is that if you're open and honest about making these deals, then that's what they are. They're deals. And that's amazing. And I know it sounds strange, but that's how it works. Because remember what I said in the beginning, we are in the spiritual war. We're in our inner war, and we cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone, and we need help. And we need to do it with knowing where everybody stands. And when you have a deal, when you have like these contracts and everything's open and honest, even just communicated. Communication is the enemy to codependence. So, and it's also, if you have this open contract and you're very clear, and honest with each other, it can be very healing. It's a lot of healing. Cancer is healing energy, and this is how you bring healing about. And this is also why it's very difficult to create healing as well. So when you make a contract or when you make a deal, everybody knows where they stand in the relationship, and nobody is being used because it's agreed upon. It's open. All right. Simple example. I'm just saying, simple example. So what happens then is something very beautiful, everybody, is that then you attain a state of independence because you stand there, I stand there, and we all know it, and that's how it is. And your state is no longer based on the state of the other person, okay? And that's really amazing because then you can bring the best to the table and not codependent expectations. And sometimes codependents can feel responsible for each other. This will be eliminated, okay? And what I always say is that when people have this problem and say, oh, feeling responsible for others, this is, first of all, a very big indication of a heart vortex that's imbalanced. But, it's such a big heart. No, it's imbalanced, right? So, it's like, that's why the heart has walls and it has chambers, and, but you are as responsible for others as you are responsible for others. And the ego does not like that. The ego says, You just repeated yourself. And I'm telling you, no, I didn't. Because you are as responsible for others as you are responsible for others, meaning as in every single person. Okay, every single person. So why focus only on one person? Why only focus and favor one person over another, somebody else, including your family member, including your, your friend, including whatever? Why single out just one person? Why are you only responsible for one person? Why does it end there? Hypocrisy. So see, codependence in and of itself, it cancels itself out, and then it leaves us in the dark. So why does that happen? Though we focus because you probably know by now, but because it gives me something. It totally gives me something. Remember what I said, like celebrities or, people who have followings, they can be very codependent with their fans. And that's totally different than being grateful for them, because the way that works is that every leader represents the body that it represents. Like every leader is a symbol for the body that it represents. But if the body is defining like telling the leader how to represent, then it's like we have this, oh gosh, Raya, what's the word I can use? This metropolis being, I don't want to say it, but like, it's kind of like this, we have this fake leader. We have a fake leader. And that is very sad, because if you think about teachers and leaders and people who lead, you want it to be an honest reflection of the body. So, or students, like I said earlier, students with their teachers. Sometimes the student doesn't really want to learn. They just want to be told that they are good, which is why a good teacher or a good leader is not codependent with what the masses are codependent with. And so there are teachers out there who will just blow smoke up your, wazoo, but it's not going to do anything. It's not going to take you to your next level. So really the best gift that you can give anyone is to not be codependent, because then you can be, you can be useful and not using. And then also you're not going to be resentful as well. And then it's going to activate this beautiful energy of what's called reciprocation, where there's this resonance, where then things build and not just things are getting sucked and zapped. And so this requires bravery. This requires courage, the courage to be rejected. This requires the courage to be projected on, the courage to be attacked, or even the courage to change your life, because you have no idea. If you stop being codependent, maybe you leave the relationship, maybe you leave the company, maybe you leave the family, maybe you leave the career, maybe, it's really this energy of the fool going off the cliff, into the next step. And a big trick that the ego will say is, for example, to justify out of this is, oh, I don't need that anymore because it's not doing anything for me. Yikes, 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 yikes. That means it's not fulfilling codependent expectations, because if something is in your reality serving you, it is doing something for you. You're just not receiving it. Remember the example I gave with the parent who loves the child, but the child cannot receive it? It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. And maybe you have a lucky streak where you are, able to have your expectations fulfilled unconsciously, right? And then one day it breaks down. That's like why many people get into what's it called, like the 7-year itch and whatnot, because it's like, wait, some of my expectations are not being met, and it's not written out, it's unspoken, and it's not working anymore. So what's going on here? So you guys, better to be open about it, open about your expectations, because then the positions are clear. If you must have them, then it's clear. Now there's an alternative, but we're not, that's not what this full moon's about. So what this is about is that we oftentimes we dress things up, we dress the situation up, we dress the other person up, or we dress them down, we take them down into something that they are not. And this is also very dangerous. And again, it's for yourself. It's for me. It's because my perception is the most important thing in the world. Haven't you figured that out by now? And again, it's this unspoken expectation that the other person has to perform, and and they have to perform exactly as you want them to. And if they don't, choose. So of course, this is all about addiction. We're essentially addicted to making our ego feel good. And I go and do this because it makes me feel good. Well, maybe the other person doesn't even like it, but still I feel good doing it. So they must feel good because I feel good. So they must feel good too, right? I mean, so it's really like, it can get very complicated. But essentially, it's really about our ego having complete dominion over the aspirations, which it does have. Our body, the ego, that's the way that it's set up. It has rulership over the aspirations and the wishes of our spirit. And it's set up like that because this allows us the opportunity to transcend and to earn fulfillment by transforming, by overcoming this limitation, because it's much easier just to be lazy and to supplement our love with things, the substitute for love. And we do it every time that we are weak, falling into codependence and making unspoken deals with people, sucking them dry of the energy. So rather than face it, really look at look at what we need to change. And then if we want to, we can step into or out of that role. And it requires no work, on the other hand, to choose codependency, to be in addiction. There's no work. I mean, really, there's not. To choose it. Afterwards, there's more work. But it's a lot of work to choose to be independent, to choose to be self-responsible, and to also have the endurance to follow the guidance of your higher self, your guardian angel, which we talked about last month. And then it's easier, then things are aflow. So it's always like that. Like things that look hard in the beginning, they're actually easier. And things that look easy in the beginning, they're actually harder. Not always, but in terms of codependency. So this is the battle that I'm talking about. And you guys, what I'm telling you again and again is that we cannot win it by ourselves. We need the assistance of a higher power. We need the assistance of God if we want to be able to liberate ourselves. And here is the paradox. This is the paradox right here. That on one hand, we have to be independent, not codependent. And at the same time, we have to accept help. And sometimes people get caught up on that. And then that is it right there. We have to be independent and accept help. Okay, not codependent and expect help. Expect, not expect, but accept. So it's out in the open and it's requested, because the most beautiful thing is that God is not going to do divine intervention unless we request it. And that's why we are gathered here. This is also why, I'm holding the space, you're connecting in. We have this amazing energy of this 48-hour window of the full moon. There's a lot of beautiful quantum energy that's available, and I'm just focusing it. And as you're listening to this, you're able to really get into that energy. And we are requesting assistance. That's what we're doing. Because when someone is not codependent, okay, when someone is not codependent in a relationship that is codependent, everything is going to break down. Now think about that. When you are independent in a codependent relationship, it's going to break down. It's going to break down. It breaks down all of this kind of like enmeshment and evil energy, this ego domination, the power of the mob energy, all of that gets broken down when someone is not codependent. And this is really powerful. Like if you are a leader of a family, a leader of a company, a leader of, whatever you're a leader of, it's very powerful. So someone who is not codependent, they cannot be bought. They cannot be swayed. They cannot be manipulated. They cannot be, coerced to behave however the ego wants it, So that's the paradox, you guys, that we need to be independent so that we can become what's called interdependent and thereby connected to everything, bringing healing from a place of esteem and also from a place of sovereignty. And that's really what I'm trying to tell you, is that when you break away from codependence, then you step into independence, and then you ask for help from the divine. Then through interdependence, it's going to come through people. So codependent expects things from others, independence accepts things from others. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. And if you have a hard time receiving, you're probably codependent. So let's break those chains. I could probably talk for a lot longer about this, but I feel that's the energy. That's how I want to deliver it. And this is how we're going to get into the next step. So now we're going to get into the online workshop. Let me just